A neighborhood woman was out on her usual evening stroll with her dog, tracing the same familiar route she always took. As she rounded the quiet bend near Libby Street, the evening felt calm, utterly ordinary. Then something unusual drew her gaze off the main trail. At first, her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Her pulse spiked as the horrifying truth clicked into place. Hands trembling, she fumbled for her phone and called 911, her voice breaking as she tried to explain the unthinkable discovery to the operator. When officers reached the scene, their grim assessment confirmed the woman's worst dread. It was Lauren Hickey. Dear viewers, please don't forget to like, leave a comment under the video, and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new videos. This is very important to us. Lauren Hickey was born on June 2, 1993, in the serene and evergreen landscapes of Washington State, nestled in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. From the very beginning, Lauren stood out for her gentle spirit and radiant presence. She grew up in a loving, tight-knit family, surrounded by warmth, kindness, and shared values. Those who knew her best often described her as deeply empathetic, someone who was always ready to lend a hand, offer a comforting word, or simply brighten someone's day with her smile. Faith played a pivotal role in Lauren's life. She was a devout Christian, and her beliefs were the compass that guided her through the choices she made and the way she treated those around her. Her relationship with God wasn't just something private. It radiated through her daily actions, in the kindness she showed to others, and in the values she lived by. Lauren pursued her higher education at Northwest University in Kirkland, Washington, a respected private Christian university known for cultivating both academic excellence and spiritual growth. There, she studied communications, a field that aligned perfectly with her natural ability to connect with people on a deep and sincere level. While earning her degree, she also nurtured her passion for health, fitness, and overall wellness, embracing a lifestyle that celebrated both physical and mental strength. Beyond academics, Lauren was a beacon of positivity on social media. Her pages were filled with uplifting messages, motivational quotes, and glimpses into a life focused on gratitude, health, and inner peace. She wasn't chasing likes or followers. She was sharing genuine moments of joy and inspiration, hoping to bring a little light to someone else's day. Eventually, Lauren made a bold decision to move to Phoenix, Arizona, a step that marked the beginning of a fresh chapter in her life. The desert landscape, the endless sunshine, and the vibrant wellness scene drew her in. She was excited to explore new career opportunities in the beauty and wellness industry, where she hoped to help others feel confident and cared for. She found employment at a local medical spa, a place where her compassionate energy and natural warmth made an immediate impact. Her coworkers spoke highly of her. They said she had a way of making everyone feel welcome, valued, and uplifted. In her personal time, Lauren fell in love with the Arizona outdoors. She especially enjoyed hiking and walking through scenic trails under the open desert sky. The Reach 11 Trail in particular became one of her favorite spots, a peaceful stretch near 64th Street and Mayo Boulevard that offered tranquil paths, wide-open views, and a chance to unwind from the bustle of the city. Lauren had recently moved into a new apartment nearby, making those walks part of her regular routine. She'd lace up her shoes, grab a coffee, and head out to breathe in the morning air, always grateful for the simple pleasures life had to offer. She truly seemed to be stepping into a season of growth, independence, and self-discovery. Her friends described her as a burst of light, someone who could walk into a room and instantly lift the energy. She was funny, kind, and full of joy, the kind of person whose presence made the world feel just a little brighter. One friend said it best: Lauren had this light about her. You felt lucky just to know her. Each morning, Lauren and her close friend, River Hubble, had a sweet ritual. They'd call each other and share what they were grateful for that day. A simple but powerful tradition that kept them grounded and connected. On the morning of April 28, 2023, Lauren made that call as usual. She told River she was thankful to have woken up to another sunny day, to enjoy a cup of coffee, and to head out for her daily walk along the trail she loved so much. There was no sense of fear, no warning signs, just a young woman starting her morning in peace. But that call would be the last time River heard Lauren's voice. By the following day, Saturday, April 29, 2023, concern began to grow. Lauren hadn't shown up for work, something completely out of character for her. She wasn't responding to messages or phone calls, and that silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, around 10 a.m., the peaceful stillness of Reach 11 Trail was about to be disrupted by an unexpected discovery. A local woman, who was out walking her dog, was making her usual loop around the path. The sun was already high, casting golden light over the trail as she rounded a quiet bend near Libby Street. That's when she saw something unusual just off the main path, something that made her stop in her tracks. At first, she wasn't sure what she was looking at, but within seconds, a sinking feeling set in. She quickly reached for her phone and dialed 911, her voice trembling as she tried to explain what she had found. The emergency call, later released by Phoenix Police in October 2024, captured every emotional second. The caller, clearly shaken, described the scene as calmly as she could. Police confirmed that what she had found was a woman. Though the caller didn't yet know her identity, it would soon be confirmed to be Lauren Heike, who had been missing for over 24 hours since heading out on her morning walk the day before. Within minutes of that 911 call, the Phoenix Police Department mobilized a response. Officers and emergency crews arrived at the scene around 10:30 a.m., initially under the assumption that they were responding to a medical emergency, such as a hiker experiencing heat-related distress. Those kinds of calls are not uncommon in the Arizona desert, but what they encountered was something far more serious. Upon arriving at the scene, first responders expected to encounter a typical emergency call, perhaps a hiker who had fallen, twisted an ankle, or become dehydrated under the Arizona sun. But it quickly became clear that this situation was far more serious and complex. This was not a routine call for medical assistance or wilderness rescue. Instead, they had stepped directly into the early moments of what would rapidly become an intense and deeply unsettling investigation. A sense of urgency filled the air as they assessed the scene. The area was swiftly secured with care and precision, ensuring that nothing was disturbed. Within minutes, a team of detectives was on site, beginning the delicate and meticulous work of trying to understand exactly what had happened and why. As investigators combed through the evidence, piecing together the fragments of a larger, more troubling story, River Hubble grew increasingly anxious. He had been trying for hours to get in touch with his friend Lauren, someone who had never once missed their daily gratitude call, not even when she was traveling or overwhelmed with work. It wasn't like her to disappear, to not show up for a shift at the med spa where she was not just respected but adored. River knew something wasn't right. The unease he felt was more than worry. It was dread. That gut-level sense that something terrible had happened. Unable to shake that feeling, River contacted local authorities to officially report Lauren as missing. What he didn't know then was that his call came just as police were beginning to draw potential connections between the unsettling discovery made on July 7th Reach 11 Trail and the sudden unexplained silence of a young woman whose absence had already begun to ripple through the lives of those who cared for her most. Reach 11 Trail isn't tucked away in some forgotten corner of the desert. In fact, it runs close to the vibrant and fast-moving boundary between Phoenix and Scottsdale. It's part of the everyday rhythm of the community, a stretch of natural beauty threaded through a city landscape, where people go not only to exercise, but to unwind, reflect, and connect with the peacefulness that nature can offer. Early mornings bring joggers pounding the dirt paths in steady rhythms, while afternoons see families walking their dogs, couples chatting, or individuals taking a moment to themselves. It's a shared space, one that fosters a sense of connection even among strangers. That's what made what happened that Saturday morning so difficult to process. For many, the trail had always felt like a sanctuary, especially for Lauren, who had confided in friends that the trail was her place to escape, to breathe, and to feel grounded. It had been, in every sense, her personal refuge. But now, that same space had become the setting for a mystery that shook the neighborhood to its core. What made the situation even more jarring was the way it touched people who were just living their ordinary lives. The woman who made the initial devastating discovery wasn't a stranger to the trail or the neighborhood. She lived nearby, just a short walk away. She and her husband were regulars, familiar faces to the other early morning walkers. They often greeted the same people, exchanged the same friendly nods with passing runners, built quiet routines of recognition. Her husband, in fact, had seen Lauren before. While they never spoke beyond a casual wave, she had been a familiar presence. Someone who belonged there. Someone they noticed. That woman, unknowingly, stepped into the center of a story that would upend the quiet rhythms of their lives. Her call to 911, shaken but composed, set off a series of events that would ripple through the community, across newsrooms, and into conversations far beyond Phoenix. In the days that followed, the trail transformed from a symbol of serenity into a site of remembrance. People came to leave flowers, not just friends or family, but strangers too. Notes, candles, even small tokens like friendship bracelets or painted stones began to appear. The messages were simple but powerful. You mattered. You were loved. We see you. It was a collective gesture of mourning and unity, a way for people to say, we stand together in this. But while the community mourned and tried to make sense of the senseless, law enforcement officials were already facing a daunting task. That initial emergency call, the one that alerted them to the scene, turned out to be just the beginning. In the span of only a few days, 3 more 911 calls came in, and each one painted a picture that was becoming harder to ignore. These new reports weren't about another discovery, but about someone, a man, who had been seen lingering near the trail. Callers described him in different ways, but there were common threads in each account. He didn't look like a hiker. He wasn't dressed for exercise, didn't appear to be enjoying the trail like others. His presence made people uneasy. He stood out, not just because of what he wore, but because of how he moved, how he watched. Something about him felt wrong. At first, the descriptions seemed too vague to act on. But as more calls came in, patterns began to emerge. Investigators started compiling details, from clothing to mannerisms, and realized that the reports were more than isolated concerns. They could be the missing pieces that would help make sense of an increasingly complicated puzzle. Phoenix Police Lieutenant James Hester was put in charge of the case. Known for his calm demeanor and sharp investigative instincts, Hester wasted no time addressing the public. In his first press conference, he stood before cameras and made his promise clear. They would not delay. They would not overlook anything. Every resource would be used. Every lead would be followed. The message to the community was one of urgency and reassurance. Still, the tension was undeniable. The once lively trail had grown quiet. Runners changed their routines. Parents stopped bringing their kids. People avoided the area altogether. The sense of safety that had once been so strong had been fractured, replaced with uncertainty and fear. Back at the precinct, detectives were working against the clock. They began reconstructing Lauren's last known moments. Through phone records and digital timestamps, they mapped a timeline that began to offer clarity. At approximately 10 a.m. on April 28th, Lauren had spoken to River, their usual check-in. A quick exchange of gratitude, some casual updates, and well wishes for the day ahead. It was routine, ordinary, but it would later be recognized as the last time anyone heard her voice. By the next morning, April 29th, over 24 hours had passed. That's when her was found near the trail, in a secluded spot not visible from the main path. That detail alone told investigators something important. Whoever was responsible had chosen that spot deliberately. It wasn't just a tragic coincidence. It was, perhaps, calculated. Phoenix PD's forensic team immediately got to work. They meticulously examined the scene, collecting every item that might yield clues. Lauren's shoe was found near a stretch of low barbed wire fencing, an odd place for it to be. Her personal items were scattered nearby. Everything was bagged carefully, documented, and sent for analysis. What they needed now was not just evidence, but a connection, something that could point to a person. And then came the break. A preliminary DNA analysis on Lauren's shoe came back with a partial profile. The DNA didn't belong to Lauren. It belonged to someone else, someone unknown. That was the moment the case shifted. This wasn't just an anonymous crime anymore. It was now traceable. As forensic work progressed, detectives took to the streets. They canvassed the neighborhoods around Reach 11. They knocked on doors, talked to hikers, interviewed anyone who frequented the trail. That's when the other 911 calls came into sharper focus. 3 different callers had reported a man behaving strangely near the area in the days before and after Lauren's disappearance. He was described as being somewhere between 5 and 6 feet tall, wearing dark clothing and carrying a backpack. Then came a significant turn in the investigation. On May 2nd, detectives obtained surveillance footage from a camera positioned near the edge of the trail. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. It showed a man running through the desert, moving fast, backpack slung over his shoulder. He wasn't jogging, he was sprinting. Had someone taken notice of her routines, her patterns? Or was this entire event a tragic, random occurrence? Investigators refused to assume anything. They chased evidence, not speculation, and that focus guided every decision they made. On May 3rd, at a scheduled press conference held in a packed room at the Phoenix Police Department, Lieutenant James Hester once again addressed the media and the concerned public. This time, the gravity of the situation was even more apparent in his tone. Although he declined to release specific information regarding the suspect or the evidence collected so far, he made it clear that the case was far from over, and that every possibility remained on the table. The nature of the incident, he said, appeared impulsive, potentially random, yet there were elements that suggested a degree of intention. Hester reiterated the importance of public cooperation while promising transparency when it would not jeopardize the investigation. Behind the scenes, however, major developments were unfolding. Forensic analysts working around the clock at the crime lab had finally confirmed that a DNA sample collected from the scene had matched a profile already stored in the National Criminal Database. This was no longer just a theory. It was now a case with a concrete lead. The man was local, in his early 20s, and he fit the general physical description captured in the surveillance footage. With a suspect beginning to emerge, police chose to keep their strategy close to the chest. They didn't release the name. They didn't hold another press conference. Why? Because they were closing in, and they didn't want him to disappear. By May 3rd, the tension had reached a peak. Lauren's parents, Jeff and Lana Heike, stood beside law enforcement at another press briefing. Lana's voice trembled as she addressed the crowd and the cameras. "She was my girl," she said, barely able to finish the sentence. Her husband stood beside her, silent but steady. Her voice wavered with emotion, but her message was clear. It came from the raw place where grief meets purpose. Her words weren't rehearsed. They didn't need to be. This was a mother speaking from the depths of heartbreak, pleading for help. Of course we want the public to think about this," she began, pausing, her voice catching. "We want somebody to come forward and help us find this person." Then came a moment that silenced the crowd. The human truth at the center of this tragedy. Lauren was she was beautiful, and she was beautiful inside and out. She had such a kind heart. Everybody who met her loved her. She was super fun. She was just a sweet woman, just everything to us. She took a breath, visibly holding back tears. "I talked to her every single day, at least once or twice a day, and we always texted too. Every phone call ended with, 'I love you, Mom.' Every single text ended the same way. That was our thing. That was Lauren. This is horrific. I'm sorry." Her voice broke, but she pressed on. "As hard as this is for us, we're grateful. Grateful because we had such a beautiful child. She had the ability to change anyone's life, no matter what they were going through. If you interacted with Lauren, you felt her goodness. She was just an amazing individual." And then the final plea, one last emotional push for answers. "I just want everyone to dig as deep as you can. Think hard. If you know anything at all, any kind of detail, please come forward. Help us." It wasn't just a press conference. It was a call to action, one that would soon change the course of the investigation. Her plea didn't fall on deaf ears. In the hours after the press conference aired, new tips began rolling in. Something had shifted. People were now connecting dots. One caller reported seeing a man with a backpack who had been acting strangely near the Reach 11 trail around the time of Lauren's disappearance. Another tip came in about a local man living less than a mile from the trail who had been exhibiting odd and unsettling behavior. The person mentioned that this man had been fired from a recent job after making co-workers uncomfortable with his aggressive and unpredictable demeanor. With each tip, detectives started piecing together a clearer image, not just of a suspect, but of a pattern. The trail that had gone cold was now heating up fast. The turning point came on May 4th, just 6 days after Lauren was discovered. A probation officer reached out to detectives with a startling lead. One of his clients, a man currently on probation for past offenses, including robbery and disorderly conduct, matched the general physical description captured on surveillance footage from the trail. He lived in Scottsdale, in close proximity to the area where Lauren often hiked. The man's name? Zion William Teasley. At just 22 years old, Teasley already had a history that raised red flags. His probation officer noted that Teasley had previously been dismissed from a job for displaying aggression, which aligned with tips from callers about someone behaving inappropriately at work and around the trail. Investigators dug deeper into his background, cross-referencing his details with the forensic evidence already on hand. The DNA sample recovered from Lauren's shoe, the one that had given them a partial match day earlier, was tested again. This time, they had Teasley's file, and when they ran it, the match came back. It was a confirmation. They had their suspect. Despite the mounting evidence, Phoenix PD made a strategic decision. They wouldn't act until they had full confirmation. Teasley was under surveillance. Detectives tailed him, quietly gathering behavioral data and corroborating information. That's when they found out something that kicked their urgency into high gear. Teasley had a plane ticket. He was scheduled to fly to Detroit on May 5th, just 1 day later. If they waited too long, he could be gone. By Thursday evening, the Phoenix Police Department had everything in place. They weren't taking chances. A tactical team was assembled, the strategy was mapped out, and every move was coordinated with precision. At around 6:30 p.m., officers arrived at Teasley's apartment complex, located not far from Scottsdale Road, less than a mile from where Lauren had last been seen. Body camera footage, later released to the public, captured the final moments before the arrest. Officers knocked on his door, announcing their presence loud and clear. "Phoenix Police, open the door!" Moments later, Teasley stepped outside, hands raised, compliant. He did not resist. Officers handcuffed him immediately. The arrest, calm and by the book, took less than 10 minutes. It was a clean operation, methodical, fast, and safe. And just like that, Zion William Teasley was in custody. Who is Zion William Teasley? As the news broke, the public wanted to know more. Who was this man at the center of the investigation? Teasley, born in the year 2000, was a Scottsdale native. At 17, he had already entered the criminal justice system, having been charged with robbery and disorderly conduct. The offenses that later put him on probation and led to the tip from his supervising officer. He had also once tried to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. A statement from the USMC clarified his history. Our records indicate that Zion Teasley entered recruit training at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, on March 25, 2019. He was separated June 17, 2019, prior to completing boot camp. Additional details are not releasable due to the Privacy Act. In other words, he never completed military training. This revelation added yet another layer to the profile detectives were building. A young man with a troubled history, behavioral issues, and now a possible connection to a high-profile criminal case. Back in 2018, when he was just 18 years old, Teasley and 2 acquaintances were involved in an incident that would serve as a precursor to the turbulence that followed. According to court records, the trio staged a robbery. Zion was accused of being the one who demanded cash. The case didn't go to trial. Instead, he took a plea deal. The sentence? Probation instead of incarceration. It was seen at the time as an opportunity for rehabilitation, a second chance, a legal crossroads where many turn things around. But instead of finding stability, Teasley's path became increasingly unstable. In the years that followed, he moved from job to job, unable to hold down steady employment. His resume reads like a patchwork of short-term positions, fast food, retail, and restaurant work. None of it stuck. When police later spoke with former co-workers, the accounts were eerily similar. People described him as unsettling, unpredictable, and in some cases, intimidating. One particular former manager at a restaurant said they had no choice but to terminate his employment in 2022 after an incident. That manager said they considered him emotionally unstable, a red flag in retrospect, and one that now seemed more troubling than ever. As the investigation into Lauren Hike's case gained momentum, law enforcement turned its attention to Teasley's living space. Officers secured a search warrant and entered his Scottsdale residence. What they discovered added more weight to the growing pile of evidence. Among the items recovered were a small, sharp pocket knife, the kind that matched details consistent with the evidence from the scene, as well as clothing and a backpack resembling the items seen in surveillance footage of the man sprinting through the street on the day Lauren vanished. These discoveries, combined with earlier DNA evidence and tipster information, painted an increasingly grim picture. On May 5, 2023, Phoenix police officially booked Zion Teasley into Maricopa County Jail. The charges brought against him were severe and sweeping: first-degree murder, robbery, and tampering with evidence. Investigators believe that in addition to the assault itself, Teasley had taken something from Lauren at the scene, though they withheld specifics. The case had moved quickly, from a quiet trail to an arrest in less than a week. But when brought in for questioning, Teasley didn't confess. In the early stages of his interrogation, he denied involvement altogether. He claimed he had never been near the Reach 11 trail on the day of Lauren's disappearance. Detectives pushed back, presenting him with the mounting forensic and video evidence. At that point, he stopped talking. He went quiet. No admission, no explanation, just silence. Meanwhile, silent witness tips continued to come in, helping law enforcement fill in the timeline. Multiple community members reported seeing a man matching Teasley's description loitering near the trail in the days leading up to the incident. One hiker even reported seeing him in a verbal altercation with someone else on April 27th, the day before Lauren's final walk. Detectives couldn't yet say for certain, but the pattern was becoming difficult to ignore. On May 6, 2023, Phoenix PD's Lieutenant James Hester addressed the public. Calm, focused, and resolute, he delivered the update. "We believe this was a random act," he stated. "At this time, there is no known connection between the suspect and the victim." He was flanked by Lauren's parents, Jeff and Lana Hike, who stood quietly, their grief etched into their faces. Jeff stepped forward to thank the public for their continued support and for the tips that had helped solve the case. "It's because of you," he said, his voice steady. "We got him." For Lauren's family, the arrest marked an important turning point. But it wasn't closure. It was, at best, the beginning of what would be a long and painful road through the justice system. By December 2023, the case escalated again. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced her office had filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty should Teasley be convicted of Lauren's murder. It was a high-stakes decision. Capital cases require more preparation, greater oversight, and lengthier legal procedures. But Lauren's family supported the move. Through a public statement, they said, "We'll be there every step of the way to ensure Lauren receives justice." And the case didn't stop evolving there. In July 2024, prosecutors added charges linked to a separate incident from 2020, a burglary involving another alleged attack. In that case, the victim had survived, and further investigation tied Teasley to the crime. Then, on February 5, 2025, even more charges emerged. According to court documents, Teasley was formally charged with 10 additional counts connected to misconduct allegations dating back to 2019 and 2020. In one instance, he reportedly made admissions, though he has since pleaded not guilty across all of those new charges. What this series of revelations began to suggest was not just a one-time breakdown, but a pattern of behavior. From the 2018 robbery to his conduct while on probation, from workplace red flags to alleged prior incidents, the portrait that emerged was of a man unraveling over time, with instability as recurring themes. As of early 2025, Zion Teasley remains in custody, now held without bond due to probation violations. His initial bond was set at $1 million, but that has since been revoked. The legal case is ongoing, and no verdict has yet been reached. The trial is scheduled to begin on October 28, 2025, in Maricopa County Superior Court, a full 2.5 years after Lauren's life was taken. The delay is due, in part, to the complexity of a capital case and the amount of evidence involved. Prosecutors are preparing to present a case based on DNA findings from Lauren's shoe, surveillance footage of the suspect running from the trail, and witness accounts describing Teasley's behavior in the area before and after the incident. The defense, meanwhile, is expected to challenge every element, from the forensics to the timeline, including phone data, camera footage, and the items collected during the search of his apartment. Lauren's family, through it all, has remained vocal and present. In an interview aired in May 2024, Jeff and Lana Heike reflected on the daughter they lost. "She had so much promise," Lana said softly. "We've now spent 2 Christmases without her, and every day we wait for the trial. They've vowed to continue attending every hearing, every court date, every development, no matter how long it takes.